They called it culling a pest. They thought killing Commander Thorne's genetically bonded canine partner during a diplomatic truce was a power move, a way to rattle the soft humans. They didn't understand that Buster wasn't just a dog. He was the psychological anchor keeping Thorne's predatory instincts in check. If you love stories where alien arrogance gets a brutal reality check, hit like and subscribe to HFY Endurance Tales right now. The Kryn hegemony just pulled the pin on a grenade they couldn't throw back. The countdown had begun, and the galaxy was about to learn that you can take a human's life, but you never ever take their dog. Commander Elias Thorne stood in the center of the grand conclave of the Kryn hegemony, a structure that felt less like a diplomatic hall and more like the inside of a predatory beast. The orbital station, the Obsidian Spire, was a testament to their power. Polished black stone, mined from crushed moons, pulsing with violet bioluminescent veins that acted as emergency lighting. The air was thick, humid, and smelled faintly of ozone and musk, the scent of apex predators. Thorne was a speck of gray in a sea of iridescent armor. He was an American male in his late 40s, his hair cropped high and tight, silvering at the temples. He wore the standard-issue dress uniform of the United Earth Coalition. Sharp lines, minimal ribbons, no ostentatious medals. He carried no weapons, only a standard-issue datapad. But it was his stillness that stood out. In a room full of 8-foot-tall reptilian humanoids who chittered, hissed, and postured constantly, Thorne was a statue carved from granite. He was surrounded by the High Lords of the Kryn, the ruling council of an empire that spanned 12 systems. They looked down at him from raised daises, their golden, slitted eyes filled with ancient arrogance. They were draped in shimmering battle silks that flowed over their natural chitinous armor plates. To them, humans were a curiosity, a soft, squishy species from a low-gravity dirtball that had barely mastered FTL travel. "High Lord Vrak," Thorne said, his voice calm, projecting clearly through the acoustic perfection of the vast chamber. "I am here to deliver the final diplomatic missive from the United Earth Coalition regarding the frontier sector disputes." Vrak, the central figure on the highest dais, leaned forward. He was massive, his scales a deep, royal crimson. He let out a rattling hiss that passed for laughter among his kind. "Another strongly worded letter, human? Your species bleeds ink, while we bleed our enemies. You speak of disputes, when you should be speaking of tribute." Thorne didn't react to the taunt. He didn't blink. He tapped the datapad. A holographic projection flickered to life in the air between them. A legal document, dense with text, automatically translating into the jagged Kryn script. "This is Article 5A, Thorne said, his voice devoid of fear. "It outlines the immediate cessation of Kryn privateering operations in the Outer Terra sector. It demands the return of seized civilian transports currently held at the Gorash shipyards. And it requires financial and resource reparations for the 92 human lives lost in your last unprovoked border adjustment on Colony 4. The chamber erupted in chitters and hisses of amusement. The sound was like 1,000 snakes rattling at once. The idea that humanity, a species that had spent the last decade desperately negotiating for trade routes and seemingly avoiding conflict at all costs, could make demands of the hegemony was the height of absurdity to them. "And if we refuse," Vrak sneered, his claws tapping rhythmically on the armrest of his throne, "will you send your little metal ships to scratch our paint? Will you sanction us with more paper?" "The document stipulates a deadline," Thorne continued, his tone unwavering, ignoring the laughter. "You have 48 standard hours to comply. Failure to do so will result in a reclassification of diplomatic status from Tier 3 non-aggression to Tier 1 total war." The laughter died down, replaced by a confused silence. Then Vrak roared with amusement. Total war? You threaten the hegemony with total war? You have a fleet of scavengers and retrofitted mining haulers. We have the warhawks. We have the void dreadnoughts. You are a prey species trying to bare teeth you do not possess. We accept your paper, human, Vrak said, waving a massive claw dismissively. Now, take your leave before we decide to keep you as a curiosity for the royal zoo. Thorn nodded once. Understood. As Thorn turned to leave, the heavy blast doors to his right hissed open. 2 Kryn Praetorian guards dragged something into the chamber. It was a heavy, lifeless weight, leaving a streak of fluid on the polished floor. Thorn stopped. His heart hammered against his ribs. A singular, painful thud. His breath caught in his throat, but his face remained a mask of stone. It was Buster, his genetically enhanced German Shepherd, his service animal, his partner for 8 years, the dog that had pulled him out of the rubble on Mars during the collapse, the dog that slept at the foot of his bunk every night. Buster was limp. His tan and black fur was matted. He was gone. We found this beast near your shuttle, Vrak said idly, picking at a piece of fruit from a bowl. It barked. It annoyed the guards. We silenced it. Consider it a down payment on those reparations you asked for. A small lesson in Kryn hierarchy. Thorn looked at the body of his best friend. He remembered the way Buster would tilt his head when Thorn was stressed, the weight of his head on Thorn's knee during the long slipspace jumps. He looked back up at Vrak. The silence in the hall stretched, heavy and suffocating. The air seemed to drop 10 degrees. The other High Lords stopped shifting. They sensed something shifted in the human's posture. The statue was no longer granite. It was uranium, radiating an invisible, lethal heat. You have made a miscalculation, Thorn said quietly. Is that a threat? Vrak hissed, leaning forward, sensing the shift. Do you wish to join the beast? No, Thorn said. You mistook restraint for weakness. You mistook diplomacy for fear. He turned and walked out. He didn't look back at Buster. He couldn't retrieve him. Not now. If he touched him, he would break, and he needed to be unbroken for what came next. Thorn walked the long crystalline corridor to the docking bay. His footsteps echoed. Click, click, click. Every step was a promise. Every step was a countdown. He boarded his command shuttle, the Diplomat. He sat in the pilot's chair and engaged the autopilot. As the shuttle detached from the alien station and drifted into the void, Thorn finally let out the breath he had been holding. He stared at the empty co-pilot seat where Buster usually sat, strapped into his custom harness. He didn't scream. He didn't punch the console. He sat in perfect, terrifying silence. He opened the secure channel to Earth Command. This is Commander Thorn, he said, his voice sounding like gravel grinding together. The deadline is set for 48 hours, but I am initiating the preload for Protocol Bloodline. Commander, Admiral Vance's voice came back, crackling with concern. Did they reject the terms? They killed the envoy, Thorn said. They killed you? Vance asked, confused. No, Thorn said, looking at the empty seat. They killed the peacekeeper. They killed Buster. There was a long silence on the other end. Admiral Vance knew exactly what that meant. He knew Thorn's history. He knew that the only thing keeping Elias Thorn from being the most dangerous tactician in the fleet was his connection to that dog. Understood, Elias, Vance said softly. God help them. Protocol Bloodline is standing by, waiting for your mark. Thorn watched the timer on his console. 47 hours, 59 minutes. He sat there for 2 days. He ate nothing. He slept only in short tactical naps. He reviewed the schematics of the Kryn sector. He analyzed their trade routes, their communication nodes, their psychological profiles. He turned his grief into a weapon. When the timer hit 0, The obsidian spire was still visible on his long-range sensors, glowing with arrogant light. Thorn opened the fleet-wide channel. "This is Commander Thorn. The deadline has passed. The Kryn have chosen escalation. Initiate Protocol Bloodline. Burn it down." The Kryn expected a fleet battle. They expected human ships to line up in formation and exchange broadsides in a glorious, stupid attempt at vengeance. That was how the Kryn fought. Honor duels, capital ship clashes, displays of dominance. They didn't understand that humans only fight fair when they think they can win easily. When humans are angry, truly deeply aggrieved, they don't fight fair at all. They fight to dismantle. 72 hours into the war, the Kryn economy began to have a stroke. On the bridge of the UEC warship Veritas, a retrofitted heavy cruiser designed for electronic warfare and long-range command, Thorn watched the tactical plot. The bridge was dimly lit, the crew moving with hushed urgency. There was no shouting, only the hum of cooling fans and the rhythmic beeping of consoles. "Status on the Kryn hyperlane beacons," Thorn asked, leaning over the holographic table. "Phase 1 complete, Commander," his cyber warfare officer, Lieutenant Miller, replied. "We've introduced the polymorphic malware into their navigation buoys. It's a cascading logic bomb. Their merchant fleet is currently routed into 3 separate uncharted nebulae. Their automated guidance systems think they are on the primary trade route to the capital. By the time they realize they aren't, they'll be out of fuel and drifting in deep space." "Good," Thorn said, his face illuminated by the blue glow of the map. "Cut their supply lines. A starving empire can't fight." "What about the banking nodes?" "Scrambled," Miller said with a grim smile. "We injected a randomization algorithm into their credit exchange. Every transaction made in the last 10 hours has been routed to zero-sum accounts. Their stock market just crashed. Riots are reported on 3 industrial worlds." Standing near the back of the bridge, guarded by 2 Marines, was Xylar. She was a Kryn tactical analyst, captured during the first border skirmish. She was tall, slender for her species, with scales the color of polished jade. Beneath her armor, bioluminescent patches shifted colors, a physiological trait of her caste that displayed emotion. Right now, she was shifting from a calm blue to an anxious, flickering violet as she watched the humans work. "I do not understand," Xylar said, her voice synthesized through a translator collar around her neck. She stepped forward as far as the guards would allow. "You have the firepower to glass our colony worlds. We know you have nuclear capabilities. Why waste time rerouting cargo freighters and hacking bank accounts?" Thorn turned to look at her. His eyes were tired, dark circles under them, but the intensity remained. "Glassing planets is lazy, Xylar," Thorn said. "It also rallies the population. If we kill your civilians, we prove Rock's propaganda right. We become the monsters he says we are. We aren't here to exterminate your people. We're here to erase the structure that allowed Rock to exist." "You fight like accountants," Xylar said, the violet patterns on her neck pulsing rapidly. "It is insulting to the warrior caste. Where is the honor in this?" "Honor is a luxury for the victors," Thorn corrected. "We fight like engineers. We're taking the machine apart, bolt by bolt. We don't want your honor. We want your surrender." The next blow fell on the Kryn shipyards at Gorash, the pride of the hegemony fleet. It wasn't a bombing run. It was a surgical insertion. Thorn watched the live feed from the helmet cam of Major Reynolds, the leader of Strike Team Alpha. The team was utilizing experimental void-walk stealth suits, technology the Kryn didn't even know existed. They were clinging to the hull of a massive Kryn dreadnought currently in dry dock. "Placement confirmed," Reynolds whispered over the comms. "Magnetic distorters are set on the graph stabilizers." "Do not detonate," Thorn ordered. "Just offset the calibration." "Copy that. Offsetting by 0.4 degrees. "Why?" Xylar asked, leaning in, unable to help her curiosity. Why not destroy the ship? If we blow it up, they build a new one, Thorn explained, watching the team exfiltrate. If we flaw the stabilizers, they launch it, they crew it, they supply it, and when they try to jump to hyperspace, the ship tears itself apart. It wastes their resources, kills their morale, and makes them doubt their own technology. Fear, Xylar. We are manufacturing fear. A week later, the reports came in. 3 new Kryn dreadnoughts had launched from Gorash. Upon entering FTL, the gravitational shear caused by the sabotage ripped the engines off the chassis. The ships were left stranded, drifting hulks. The rest of the fleet was grounded for inspection, paralyzed by their own unreliability. Xylar watched the reports on the human displays, her bioluminescence flashing a chaotic mix of colors, yellow for fear, red for anger, and green for confusion. You aren't just defeating us, she whispered, looking at Thorn with a new kind of expression. You are humiliating us. This is psychological torture. It's efficient, Thorn said, turning back to the map. And we're just getting started. If you're enjoying seeing how humanity handles business when the gloves come off, make sure you're subscribed to HFY Endurance Tales. We document the grit. Now, let's turn the heat up. The Kryn High Lords, panicked and furious, finally made their move. High Lord Vrak gathered the remaining functional fleet at the Valara Nebula, a crucial choke point leading to their inner systems. It was a massive armada, heavy cruisers, carrier ships, and thousands of fighters. They intended to force a decisive battle, to crush Thorn and end this humiliating invisible war. Thorn looked at the tactical display, showing the massive Kryn armada forming up in the nebula's gas clouds. They think we're stuck in here with them, Thorn murmured, a grim, humorless smile touching his lips for the first time in weeks. They think the nebula interferes with our targeting scanners. Does it not? Xylar asked. Valara is a sensor dead zone. It is a classic ambush site. Your force is insufficient to engage them there. You have 3 cruisers and a handful of destroyers. They have 50 capital ships. Thorn tapped his comms unit. Admiral Vance, the bait is taken. They have gathered exactly where we wanted them. Close the trap. Trap? Xylar blinked. There are no other human ships on the scanner. We don't need ships, Thorn said. Space around the Kryn fleet shimmered. It wasn't ships arriving. It was thousands of automated mining drones, retrofitted with shape-charge warheads, dropping out of silent running. They had been seeding the nebula for days, drifting inert, disguised as space debris. Detonate, Thorn ordered. The nebula lit up. It wasn't a single explosion, it was a cascade. Thousands of shape charges detonated simultaneously, targeting the unshielded engines and sensor arrays of the Kryn fleet. The gas of the nebula ignited in pockets of superheated plasma. The Kryn sensors lit up like a Christmas tree just as the minefield went active. The trap wasn't about overpowering them, it was about blinding them. Now, Thorn said, his voice dropping an octave, send in the wolf pack. The detonation of the minefield at Valara didn't destroy the Kryn fleet entirely. Their armor was too thick, but it crippled them. It stripped away their particle shields, blinded their long-range sensors, and sent their formations into chaos. It turned a coordinated armada into a panicked mob of behemoths bumping into each other in the dark. That's when Thorn led the Veritas and his wolf pack of destroyers into the chaos. All ships, execute pattern Delta 9, Thorn commanded. Target their engine blocks. I want them drifting, not dead. Leave the life support intact where possible. The battle was brutal, fast, and surgical. Human railguns, accelerating tungsten slugs to a fraction of the speed of light, punched through the weakened Kryn armor like paper. The human ships moved with a fluidity that baffled the reptilian commanders. They didn't stand and fight. They strafed, engaged, and vanished back into the gas clouds. Thorn stood on the bridge, the floor vibrating with the rhythmic thrum of the main cannons. Target acquired, Lieutenant Miller called out. Kryn heavy cruiser Fang of Vrak. Their starboard engine is exposed. Take the shot, Thorn said. The impact sheared the entire engine nacelle off the alien cruiser. The ship began to list heavily, venting atmosphere. But amidst the wreckage and the calculated violence, a distress call pierced the comms chatter. It wasn't a military frequency. It was jagged, desperate, and open channel. "Commander," the comms officer called out, hesitation in his voice. "We have a signal. It's a Kryn transport vessel, the Traveler's Hope. It was caught in the crossfire of the minefield. Reactor containment is failing. They're hailing us. They're begging for assistance." Thorn's jaw tightened. He looked at the plot. The transport was drifting dangerously close to a pocket of burning plasma. "It is a trick," Xylar said immediately, her bioluminescence flashing a warning red. "Kryn doctrine dictates that damaged ships self-destruct to damage the enemy. Do not approach." Thorn paused. He thought of Vrock, laughing, as the dog's body was dragged away. The impulse to let Vrock's people burn was strong. It was a seductive, angry voice in the back of his head, whispering that they deserved it. But then he looked at the crew of the Veritas. They were waiting for his order. They were looking at him to see what kind of men they were today. "Scan for life signs," Thorn ordered. "Scans confirm 3,000 biological signatures," Miller said. "Civilians, non-combatants, families." Thorn looked at Xylar. "We aren't Kryn, Xylar. We don't kill pets to send a message, and we don't let civilians burn just because it's convenient." He keyed the comms. "Tactical. Target the transport's reactor coupling with a precision lance shot. Vent that plasma buildup before it goes critical. Rescue teams, prepare for immediate boarding and evacuation. I want Marines on that ship in 5 minutes." "You risk your ship for the enemy?" Xylar asked, genuine confusion rippling across her features. "This is illogical. It wastes resources." "It saves our soul," Thorn said, grabbing his helmet. "Captain Miller, you have the bridge. I'm leading the extraction team." The rescue operation was a descent into hell. Thorn and his Marine squad breached the airlock of the dying Kryn transport. The air was filled with acrid smoke and the screams of reptilian civilians. The gravity plating was failing, causing the orientation of the ship to shift wildly. "Move! Move toward the shuttles!" Thorn yelled, his voice amplified by his helmet speakers. The Marines, armored giants in the eyes of the terrified Kryn civilians, didn't open fire. They formed a protective corridor. They used their own oxygen supplies to help suffocating children. Thorn moved through the chaos with a singular focus. He found a group of young hatchlings trapped under a collapsed bulkhead. He didn't hesitate. He jammed his armored shoulder under the metal beam, his exosuit servos whining with the strain, and lifted it just enough for them to scramble free. One small hatchling, no bigger than a human toddler, froze in fear. Thorn scooped it up. The creature hissed, terrified, clawing at his armor. "Easy, little one," Thorn muttered, shielding the creature's head as an explosion rocked the corridor. "I got you." When the last civilian was off, Thorn was the last human to step onto the extraction shuttle. He carried the small, frightened Kryn hatchling. Back on the Veritas, the cargo bay was a scene of organized chaos. Medics were treating reptilian burns. The rescued Kryn huddled in groups, staring at their human saviors with varying degrees of terror and confusion. They had been told humans were mindless savages. Yet, here they were, being given water and blankets. Thorn walked in, covered in soot and alien hydraulic fluid. He carefully handed the hatchling back to a grateful, weeping elder. Xymar was there, watching. Her bioluminescence shifted to a soft, muted green, a color Thorn hadn't seen before. It indicated deep, foundational contemplation. "You are confusing creatures," she admitted, looking at the hatchling safe in its parents' arms. "You destroy our fleets with ruthless efficiency, yet you risk your lives for our young." "We're complicated," Thorn said, wiping ash from his faceplate. We can be your best friend or your worst nightmare. You guys just picked the wrong option. Suddenly, a junior intelligence officer burst into the bay, holding a data tablet. His face was pale, his hands shaking. Commander, intelligence recovery from the crippled Kryn flagship, Fang of Vrak. We downloaded their central database before the ship went dark. You need to see this, now. He stepped away from the crowd. He read the file. It was a decrypted order from High Lord Vrak, dated 2 weeks before the diplomatic incident where Buster was killed. It was a plan for the systematic sterilization of Earth. The diplomatic meeting had been a stall tactic. Killing Buster hadn't just been cruelty. It was a deliberate provocation intended to draw humanity into a rash, disorganized attack that would justify a pre-planned genocide. They had maps of Earth's population centers. They had quotas for slave labor. They were going to wipe humanity out, regardless of the treaty. Thorn read the file twice. The cold rage returned, heavier than before. It wasn't just about a dog anymore. It was about survival. He handed the tablet to Xylar. Read it. She read it, her green bioluminescence flashing to a horrified crimson. This violates the Articles of the Hegemony. Genocide, without provocation, is forbidden by the ancient laws. Vrak, he is a traitor to his own caste. They were never going to let us live, Xylar, Thorn said, his voice devoid of emotion. The warning I delivered, it was their last chance to be something other than monsters. They chose this. Thorn walked to the nearest wall comms unit. Bridge, this is Commander Thorn. The rules of engagement have changed. We are no longer dismantling a regime. We are ending a threat to our species' existence. Orders, Commander? Miller asked. Protocol Bloodline is fully active, Thorn said, his voice echoing in the silent cargo bay. Target the Hegemony capital system. We are going to the Obsidian Spire, and we are going to burn a path straight to Vrak's throne. The assault on the Kryn capital system wasn't a battle. It was an execution of a military-industrial complex. The human fleet, now reinforced by the full might of the UEC Navy, battleships, carriers, and missile cruisers, dropped out of hyperspace right on top of the orbital defenses. They didn't bother with the outer planets. They drove straight for the primary world, Krynos, the seat of High Lord Vrak's power. Thorn, back on the bridge of the Veritas, directed the symphony of destruction. Kinetic bombardment wings target the military production facilities on the southern continent. Level them. Cyber Warfare Division, I want the planet's entire defense grid offline in 10 minutes. Do not target civilian population centers, but make sure the ruling caste has nowhere to hide. The space above the capital world filled with the white streaks of railgun rounds and the blue trails of torpedoes. The orbital station where Thorn had delivered his warning, the place where Buster had died, was the first thing to go. A concentrated volley of heavy anti-ship missiles cracked the Obsidian Spire open like an egg, sending shards of black stone raining down into the atmosphere. On the surface, the Kryn military infrastructure crumbled. Barracks, weapons factories, command bunkers, they were systematically erased by pinpoint orbital strikes. The sky of Krynos turned a bruised purple from the fires. Xylar stood by Thorn, no longer guarded. She was watching the dismantling of her civilization's power structure with a mix of sorrow and resignation. You are thorough, she said, her voice trembling slightly. We warned Vrak, Thorn said, not looking away from the destruction. We gave him terms, lawful, reasonable terms. He thought he could bully us into extinction. He forgot that humans spent thousands of years fighting each other before we ever reached the stars. We know how to break things better than anyone. The comms officer interrupted, his voice rising in panic. Commander, we're picking up a massive energy spike from the High Lord's Citadel on the surface. It doesn't match any known weapons profile. It's coming from deep underground. Thorn looked at the main screen. The central citadel, A massive fortress of black stone, located in the capital city, was glowing with an ominous, pulsing green light. The ground around it was shaking. Xylar gasped, her skin turning stark white, the color of terror. By the ancestors, no, Rock wouldn't. He is mad. What is it, Xylar? Thorn demanded, grabbing her shoulder. Talk to me. It is the World Ender, she whispered. An ancient tectonic resonance weapon. It was banned thousands of cycles ago by the founding Concordat. It is designed to crack a planet's crust, to destroy hive mind infestations. If he fires it while the planetary defense shield is down, it won't just destroy your fleet in orbit with the backlash. It will shatter the tectonic plates of Krynos. He will kill everyone on the planet, his own people, just to take you with him. The holopad lit up with a transmission from the surface. It was High Lord Vrak. He looked ragged, his battle silks torn, covered in dust, but his eyes were manic with spite. Human, Vrak spat, his face filling the screen. You think you have won? You think you can humiliate the hegemony? If I cannot rule this galaxy, then no one will have this world. I have activated the resonance cannon. In 10 minutes, the core will destabilize, and we all burn together. The transmission cut. Thorn looked at the tactical readout. The energy buildup was exponential. The planet was already beginning to quake. Can we hit it from orbit? Thorn asked. Negative, the tactical officer shouted. The Citadel has engaged a hard light shield, powered by the weapon itself. Our orbital bombardment isn't punching through fast enough. We have minutes. Thorn stood up. He pulled his sidearm from his holster and checked the charge. If we can't bomb it, we have to go down there and turn it off by hand, Thorn said. Prep my shuttle. Marine Strike Team Alpha and Bravo, on me. We're doing a hot drop. He turned to Xylar. You know the Citadel layout. You know the weapon protocols. I do, she said, fear warring with duty. You're coming with us, Thorn said. It's time to save your people from their own king. The orbital drop was chaos. The atmosphere of Krynos was a maelstrom of anti-aircraft fire and debris. Thorn's shuttle, flanked by 2 marine transports, punched through the flak, shaking violently. Hold on, the pilot screamed as a flak shell burst near the starboard wing. They crash-landed in the Citadel's central courtyard, skidding across polished stone pavement under heavy fire from Vrak's elite Praetorian Guard. The ramp dropped before the shuttle even stopped moving. Go! 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 Thorn yelled. He sprinted out, his rifle raised. The courtyard was a war zone. The Praetorian Guards were massive, armored tanks of biological fury, wielding plasma pikes. But the human Marines were faster, smaller, and angrier. Thorn moved with practiced efficiency, a cold focus driving him forward. Every step was for Buster. Every shot was a receipt for the arrogance that had led them here. He dropped a guard with a double tap to the helmet visor, slid over a marble barricade, and tossed a flashbang. Xylar stayed close to Thorn, guiding them through the labyrinthine corridors. She had seen the human capability for violence from a distance, but up close, it was terrifying. They didn't fight with the ritualistic flair of the Kryn. They fought with dirty, brutal, overwhelming economy of motion. The generator complex is 3 levels down, Xylar shouted over the roar of gunfire. We must hurry. The tremors are getting worse. The Citadel shook violently as the resonance weapon powered up. Cracks appeared in the walls. Dust rained down. They breached the central chamber. It was a cavernous hall, dominated by the weapon, a massive, throbbing crystalline machine suspended over a deep shaft that led into the planet's crust. The air vibrated with the immense power building up within it. The sound was a low thrum that rattled teeth. The countdown timer on the console read 030. High Lord Vrak stood on a command platform above the weapon, surrounded by his last 4 Praetorians. You are too late, vermin. Vrak roared over the din of the machine. The sequence is locked. Witness the end. Thorn didn't waste time with speeches. Marines, suppress the guards. I'm going for the console. Thorn sprinted up the ramp toward Vrak. The Praetorians moved to intercept, but the Marines unleashed a wall of lead, pinning them down. Vrak drew a wicked-looking energy-curved sword and charged Thorn. The High Lord was bigger, stronger, and faster. He swung the blade, intending to cleave the human in two. Thorn didn't try to block it. He slid underneath the swing, the heat of the blade singing his hair. He rolled to his feet behind the reptile, and fired his rifle point-blank into the back of Vrak's knee joint. Vrak roared and collapsed to one leg, his armor absorbing some of the damage, but the joint failing. He spun, backhanding Thorn with a massive clawed fist. Thorn flew backward, slamming into the control console. His vision blurred. His ribs screamed in protest. He tasted blood. Vrak loomed over him, raising the sword for the killing blow. "You die here, human. Unremembered. Unmourned." Thorn looked up. He saw the timer. 0:45. He reached into his belt and pulled out not a weapon, but a high-explosive breaching charge. "I won't be unmourned," Thorn spat, blood coating his teeth. "I'm the guy who killed you." Thorn didn't throw the charge at Vrak. He slapped it onto the console behind him, right onto the shield generator node. He rolled away, just as Vrak brought the sword down. The blade struck the floor where Thorn had been. Boom! The breaching charge detonated. It didn't destroy the weapon, but it shattered the localized hardlight shield protecting the controls. "Xylar, now!" Thorn yelled. Xylar sprinted from cover, diving for the exposed manual override. Vrak turned, realizing the danger. He lunged for Xylar. Thorn tackled Vrak's leg, holding on with everything he had. "You're not going anywhere." Vrak kicked Thorn, shattering his nose, but Thorn held on. He was pure, stubborn human grit. Xylar reached the console. Her hands flew over the alien interface. "I need the command code." He changed it. "Use the emergency purge," Thorn yelled, taking another kick to the chest. "Dump the core." "It will destroy the Citadel," Xylar screamed. "Better than the planet. Do it." Vrak raised his sword to impale Thorn. "Die." Xylar slammed her hand onto the purge lever. The massive crystalline weapon shrieked. The green glow turned a violent, unstable red. The energy that was being channeled into the planet's core was suddenly vented upward, through the Citadel's exhaust port. The shockwave knocked everyone flat. Vrak was thrown off the platform, tumbling into the dark shaft below, screaming as he fell into the very energy stream he had created. "Run!" Thorn gasped, crawling toward the exit. "Move!" Thorn and Xylar scrabbled out of the chamber as the weapon began to melt down. They sprinted through the crumbling corridors, the heat rising rapidly. They burst into the courtyard just as the Marine extraction shuttle hovered low, ramp open. They dove onto the ramp. The shuttle boosted away, engines screaming, just as the central spire of the Citadel erupted. A pillar of pure energy shot into the sky, vaporizing the fortress. The shockwave flattened the city blocks surrounding it. But the planet held. The resonance stopped. The tremors ceased. Thorn lay on the deck of the shuttle, staring at the ceiling, his chest heaving. He was alive. The Treaty of Terra was signed 1 month later on the deck of the UEC Veritas, orbiting the subdued and recovering Kryn capital. It was not a negotiation, it was a dictation of terms. The Kryn hegemony was dissolved as an imperial entity. Their military caste was abolished. Their shipyards were placed under UEC supervision. The surviving High Lords were in holding cells, awaiting war crimes tribunals for the attempted genocide of humanity and their own people. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. The broadcast went out to 1,000 worlds. The ancient, powerful Kryn had not just been beaten. Their entire imperial identity had been erased in a matter of weeks by the species everyone had dismissed as soft traitors. Thorn stood by the observation window of the Veritas, looking down at the planet below. Reconstruction drones were already swarming over the ruins of the capital, helping to rebuild. He wore his dress uniform again, He looked exactly the same as he had the day he delivered the warning. Stoic, calm, save for the healing bruising on his face and a deeper sadness in his eyes. Xylar approached him. She was no longer a prisoner. She was dressed in the robes of a diplomatic liaison for the new Kryn provisional government. Her bioluminescence was a calm, steady blue, the color of peace. "The civilian aid shipments have arrived," Xylar said softly. "My people are grateful. They expected enslavement. That is what we would have done to you." "We aren't you, Xylar," Thorn said, not turning away from the window. "We don't keep slaves. We don't wipe out bloodlines because we can. We just make sure the ones who start the fights can never do it again." Xylar stepped closer, looking out at the stars with him. "I have reviewed the historical archives you provided. About dogs, about the bond between humans and their pets." "Service animal," Thorn corrected gently. "Partner. They are more than that to you," Xylar said, her voice filled with a new understanding. "They are external manifestations of your capacity to love, to bond with something other than yourselves. Vrak did not just kill an animal. He attacked the part of you that makes you resist your violent nature. He broke the lock on the cage." Thorn didn't say anything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn metal tag. It said, Buster. He rubbed his thumb over the letters. It was cool to the touch. "The galaxy knows now," Xylar continued. "They know that the human capacity for violence is equaled only by your restraint. And they know what happens when that restraint is removed. You have changed the political landscape for the next 1,000 years, Commander." She turned to face him, her expression solemn. She performed a human gesture she had learned, a slow nod of respect. "You warned us, Commander Thorn. It is a shame my people were too arrogant to listen until the sky fell on them." Thorn nodded slowly. He put the tag back in his pocket, close to his heart. "Yeah, it is." He turned away from the window. The work wasn't done. There was a peace to build now, a harder task than war. But as he walked down the corridor of the ship, the silence at his side, where Buster used to heal, was deafening. He could almost hear the click of claws on the deck plates, a phantom memory of the friend who had saved the galaxy by being the catalyst for its liberation. The war was won. The warning was heeded. Too late. But the cost was permanent. Humanity had proved its point, and the galaxy would never forget the lesson. You can push a human, and they might bend. You can threaten their worlds, and they might negotiate. But if you touch the things they love, their friends, their family, their dogs, they won't just break you. They will erase you from history. Thorn walked into the bridge, ready for the next shift. The galaxy was safe, but he would never stop missing his boy. If you enjoyed this story of absolute consequence and the unbreakable bond between man and dog, make sure to like the video and subscribe to HFY Endurance Tales. We bring you the best stories of humanity standing tall against the dark. Share this video with someone who understands that some lines should never be crossed. And tell us in the comments, what would you do if someone touched your pet? We'll see you in the next one. Stay strong.